Well, hello everyone and happy Monday. It's digital host A.J. Wuest welcoming you back to Before the Four, the live stream where I go through some of 48's top news stories and then some before the 4 o'clock newscast. Now, it's been a couple of days. I took a 4-day weekend this past weekend, but it is so great to be back here with you all to give Before the Four. But shout out to fellow digital host Tatiana White. She absolutely rocked it on Friday when she filled in for Before the Four. And of course, the 48 recap, which goes on Saturday afternoon. But hello everyone and welcome back. Now, we have quite a bit we can jump into today. So I say, without further ado, we start things off. And of course, wherever you're watching Before the Four, as always, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or the 48 Now live stream, thank you for watching and spending a bit of your Monday afternoon here. Now let's begin in Priceville, where earlier today drivers traveling on I-65 are being asked to drive with caution as concrete has fallen from an overpass. Now authorities say concrete from the Upper River Road overpass has fallen onto I-65. The debris has stirred up a bit of traffic this afternoon. Priceville Police has responded and state troopers along with ALDOT has been notified. Now officials say a truck apparently struck the bridge and a crew has been called in to close the right southbound lane and remove the debris. A bridge engineer has also been called in and we'll continue to keep you updated as soon as we learn more. But moving out to Lawrence County, where we sadly learned that a 23-year-old Athens man was killed in a wreck involving an 18-wheeler this morning. Lawrence County Coroner Scott Norwood says the wreck happened on Highway 20 near County Road 585. State troopers say 23-year-old Matthew Ebert was killed when the Toyota Tacoma he was driving in struck a tractor trailer. Norwood says the vehicle crashed onto the back of the 18-wheeler. Now, state troopers are continuing to investigate, and we'll make sure to update you all with the latest as soon as we learn more. And moving out to Morgan County, where a man from Cuba, Alabama, was arrested this morning on drug and gun charges following a traffic stop. Priceville police say officers tried to pull Anthony Hill, that's who you see on screen, over just before 4 this morning, heading south on I-65. Instead of stopping, however, police say Hill attempted to flee at speeds over 100 miles per hour, but he later stopped on his own. Officers then learned Hill had a nationwide extradition arrest warrant for felony eluding law enforcement with Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office in Meridian, Mississippi. Officers say they also found opiates in his possession, a rifle, along with money inside Hill's car. Hill was charged with trafficking dangerous drugs, unlawful possession of a firearm, and felony fleeing. Hill is currently in the Morgan County Jail. His bond is set at $400,000. And of course, staying in Morgan County, earlier today we learned that 2 Morgan County corrections officers were injured after an inmate allegedly attacked them on Thursday. Authorities say the corrections officers were overseeing the meal delivery and booking when 34-year-old inmate Chaz Mandel Reed attacked them. Reed is accused of punching one of the officers in the face and headbutting the other, breaking both their noses. The corrections officers received medical attention and was transported to Decatur Morgan Hospital. Officials say they're expected to make a full recovery. Reed was initially in jail after being charged with robbery, escape, and resisting arrest. Officials say investigators are now obtaining a warrant for assault. But now, last night, in case you missed it, Huntsville Fire and Rescue crews responded to a historic train car that caught fire at the Huntsville Depot Museum downtown. The 911 call went out around 6:15. Crews were able to get on scene quickly and were able to get the fire under control. Now, nobody was reported injured, but the train appears to be severely damaged. We are currently awaiting for more information from the museum. City officials say they believe the fire was not initially set, but the cause remains a mystery. But we were not able to have a weather forecast today for Before the 4. But make sure you all stick around for Weather Extra. That will be 48 First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brad Travis. He will give all the latest he is seeing on the radar this week. This week looks to be a lot sunnier than last week, that is for sure, especially this work week. Now, the weekend, we're going to get into all the weekend plans that you all might have done this weekend later on, but it was a very sunny weekend. That's my kind of weather. But yeah, make sure to stay tuned for Weather Extra tonight at 9:30. But now, moving on to yesterday, it marked 14 years since dozens of tornadoes ripped through the state of Alabama, destroying everything in sight. 48's Noah Cowell gives us a story on how 911 dispatchers have evolved since that tragic day.
Huntsville-Madison County 911 Center normally gets around 500 calls a day, a number they can easily handle. But when 62 tornadoes came through the state of Alabama on April 27, 2011, CEO Ernie Blair says dispatchers were taking 3 times that many, and even immediately after storms hit Anderson Hills, Carter's Gin, and Harvest. But not all the callers were in Madison County.
We found out that we were getting calls from other counties around the state. We think it's probably because we are the largest 911 center in the state, and probably the carriers, the cellular carriers out there probably decided that, hey, after this fails and this fails and this fails, we'll just send it to Huntsville-Madison County because they can handle it.
And handle it they did. Blair says through all the calls inside and outside the county, they didn't miss or mishandle a single one. Blair says their success came down to their preparedness and their computer-aided dispatch system. Hexagon Vice President Ben Ernst says the company, which supplies this system to Huntsville-Madison County and 911 centers across the world, has advanced its emergency response technology since that day. Their smart advisor assistive AI diverts non-emergency calls, and an AI-enhanced portal allows multiple agencies to be on the same page and respond effectively to calls.
What I think we've done a good job of in partnership with Madison County 911 is providing the tools and technology to very quickly dispatch emergency responders to the most affected areas as quickly as possible. And I think through some of the technology solutions and innovations that Hexagon is focused on, we continue to roll out those capabilities in partnership with Huntsville, Madison County 911.
Well, now Alabama lawmakers are running out of time to pass a bill that would make things like baby formula and diapers more affordable for parents. If passed, those things, along with feminine hygiene products, would be exempt from state sales tax. 48 Sarah Grace Kennedy spoke with a state representative who says it's time to lift that tax. Sarah Grace Kennedy reports.
The fact is that it is an unfair tax that only half the population has to pay into.
Alabama lawmakers are considering exempting many important health items from the state sales tax rate. Catherine Gibson is a Huntsville mother who has 4 children under the age of 5. She tells me if this change is made, it will really help provide her family with some financial flexibility.
My husband is the sole provider and he works 2 jobs, but money's tight. So it's frustrating. Like, you know, I take care to budget, and you know, there's that sales tax at the end. And when basically everything I'm getting is a necessity to life.
House Bill 152 would exempt baby formula, baby bottles, baby wipes, breast milk pumping equipment, breast pumps, diapers, maternity clothing, and menstrual hygiene products from sales tax.
All of that affects moms, and I did the math on it, and I think in the last 2 years it would have saved my household $40 for every 1,000, so maybe $200, you know, which is a significant amount of money, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck.
The bill's sponsor, Neil Rafferty, says that he believes the amount of money families will save is worth a potential decrease in tax revenue.
And we also have the sunset provision on there just so we can watch and see how much money is costing the state versus how much it's actually saving families.
Victoria Tice is a local doula and a mother of 2 young children. Tice tells me it can be hard for a lot of families to pay for baby supplies.
I mean, parents are struggling. Parents that have single income homes, parents that have double income homes. Diapers and wipes are increasingly expensive. Formula, we all know how expensive formula is, so this would be taking a huge burden off of all parents.
Tice says that she's really happy that the state is working to help take the burden off of families.
It's not just about having babies. It's about building a world that actually supports the people who are raising them. And because this bill is hopefully going to go through, and the fact that it had unanimous bipartisan support by the state of Alabama so far, it feels like a huge gesture to women.
Well, good deal. And now coming up after the break, recapping Panoply, of course, the annual arts festival in Huntsville that, in a rare occurrence, did not get rained out this weekend. We'll talk about all that coming up. The conclave now has a start date to begin the election process of choosing a new pope. President Trump's first 100 days in office, and a story you're just not going to want to miss. It's all ahead. I'll be right back in 1 minute. All right, the time is up. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Before the Four. Now, you definitely had quite a bit to choose from to do this past weekend in Huntsville. A lot going on downtown, everything from Monster Jam to Peter Pan. The Trash Pandas out in Madison as well. They were facing the Birmingham Barons. But let's not forget Panoply. Of course, the annual arts festival. 48's Callie Nice recaps this year's festival, which many are calling a success. Take a look.
Panoply organizers say that this year's event was a great success, adding that even with some of the construction here downtown, they were able to fit over 120 different booths here at Big Spring. Julia Wolf makes leather goods, but the leather she uses is not like most. Some are scrap pieces of leather, or some still have the branding from the cows the leather came off of. Wolf says she loves to share her art at Panoply year after year because of the great people here in Huntsville.
Some of my very first customers from 5 years ago show up and they're still buying from me, and I think that's honestly just so cool that they've seen the progression that we've made from like mostly black and white to full-blown color, and so it's just nice to see the friendly faces again.
Wolf is just one of the 100+ tents here at Panoply. There are photographers, potters, painters, and so much more. Patrice Johnson is one of the organizers of Panoply. She says artists have come from all over, some as far as Canada, to share their art here in the Rocket City. Best of all, unlike other years, the rain has stayed away.
It's been great. We're really happy with the turnout. I know we had a lot of questions about the weather and attendance and things like that, but it's been wonderful. We were overjoyed with the attendance yesterday and Friday, and we've just been really excited. It's been a wonderful weekend, so we couldn't complain.
The gates just closed to this year's event. Panoply organizers say they hope visitors made some great memories here at Panoply. Reporting from Panoply, Callie Nice, 48 News, on your side.
And it is always great to see the weather hold up, especially for Panoply, which seems like it's almost every year there is some kind of rain delay or the threat of rain is very much in the radar. But it was great. I went Saturday. I stayed to see Joe Canada perform. I bought an art piece, but it was a great time. If you guys haven't checked out Panoply, I definitely recommend next year. You got to head out there. You got to go see it all. And it was a beautiful weekend to do it, that's for sure. But now moving into a bit of national news, President Donald Trump is hitting a major milestone of his second term. 100 days since taking office. WAFF Washington correspondent Ashanti Ford joins us from the nation's capital with how he's marking the occasion. Take a look.
The first 100 days are symbolic for a president. It sets the tone for their new agenda. It also serves as a marker for the administration, for Congress, for the nation to reflect on the work that's been done. President Trump will celebrate that day right outside of Detroit, Michigan.
And be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation.
President Trump's first 100 days in office came with a long line of historic changes and an administration that prides itself on promises made, promises kept. President Trump is set to hold a rally outside of Detroit, Michigan to celebrate these changes, which include mass deportations, new alliances, tariffs, and massive cuts to the federal workforce. All promises he ran on during his 2024 presidential campaign. And while he is expected to have a large crowd of supporters in Michigan, Pew Research reports that 60% of the American people no longer stand with his mission. This is what democracy looks like. Including Democrats who have called President Trump's agenda a threat dating back to his first term.
And that bill, we believe, presents one of the greatest moral threats to our country that we've seen in terms of what it will do to providing food for the hungry, care for the elderly, services for the disabled, health care.
Republican lawmakers in Michigan say they welcome President Trump to their state, highlighting the work he's done to, as they say, make America great again. This will be his first visit to Michigan since he won the swing state in November. In the nation's capital, I'm Ashanti Ford.
And now moving on to global news. This morning, the Cardinals went back to work, holding another meeting in preparation for the conclave where they will elect the successor to Pope Francis. That day is now set for May 7th. NBC's Ann Thompson reports.
The Sistine Chapel is closed this morning to prepare for the election of the next pope after a weekend celebrating the life of Pope Francis. In the majestic setting of St. Peter's Square, a funeral for a man who wanted to be remembered simply as a pastor. 250,000 people crowded the square and spilled into the streets, most just pilgrims. While near the altar sat the powerful, including President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the two also meeting privately at the Vatican. At the funeral, all heard the Dean of the College of Cardinals praise Francis as the man who spoke for the voiceless, especially migrants and refugees, recalling the Pope's phrase to build bridges, not walls. Across the ocean in France's hometown of Buenos Aires, the Archbishop moved to tears at a Mass for the Pope. Then Rome said goodbye to Francis, who was also its bishop, a final ride through its streets in the Pope-mobile, to his burial site inside the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. A respectful atmosphere as cardinals prayed, while outside a festive feeling. These Brazilian nuns applauded Francis' attention to those on the edge of society.
His joy, his openness.
The wait Sunday, 2 hours to spend seconds in front of his tomb. Ushers telling the crowd to move quickly and men to remove their hats. For Cincinnati's Karen Dime, it was overwhelming.
Just what Pope Francis meant to the world, a very moving experience.
Now, today on the good side, a woman in South Alabama says her life was shattered after a dive into a lake left her paralyzed. In her darkest days, she says she found light through art. WTVY's Mia Nelson has her story and her inspiration.
Behind every brushstroke on a painting is an artist.
God has given me a talent that I never knew that I had.
The artist behind these pieces is Natalie Falk.
What do you think about when you're painting?
You know, I actually, I pray a lot while I paint.
Pretty cool, sweet marks. Just gorgeous.
Her art on display at Carol's Nursery in Midland City is her heart on display after she found light in a dark time.
It all changed in an instant.
Over Labor Day weekend in 2019, Natalie escaped death during a Lake Eufaula accident, but was left paralyzed from the chest down.
I dove in and it was a shallow area of the lake. I went head first and broke my neck, my spinal, and had a spinal cord injury. I was face down in the water, could not turn over, and it was very scary.
Today, though, she smiles as she designs her creations, which she calls a small light.
Where does the name A Small Light come from?
I remember just being very sad and a lot of grief and darkness during that time, and I just slowly kind of saw a little bit of light come in. I could just feel the presence of God in my life during that time.
During rehabilitation, an art teacher introduced her to watercolor painting.
I like to say that I'm always looking for a creative solution to a unique problem. To pick up the paintbrush, it was kind of on a whim, really. First, I had to figure out how to hold a paintbrush. I learned to put the paintbrush in between my fingers like this. I'm not able to lift my arms over my head, and I have no finger function.
It's not always easy, but she continues to challenge herself.
I deal with, chronic pain with my injury. It really is a labor of love. I just trust in the Lord to push my ability in that.
While it likely wasn't the story she would have written of her life, she knows sharing it inspires others to discover goodness and beauty in hard times.
I think it's important to share your story and what God has done in your life. Everybody goes through their own grief and darkness at some point, and to know that you're not alone is very important.
It seems a small light is all it takes to illuminate hope.
This too shall pass. Remember where your help comes from. You'll see that later on, that hidden hand of God and how He's worked in your life.
Wow. Now, how is that story for your Monday afternoon? These good side packages, these videos I play, they always tug on my heartstrings and get me misty-eyed. I'm like, no, I have to get back on camera, but that is such an awesome story, and she is truly a fighter. And yeah, I love her attitude about everything. It is so great. That this too shall pass attitude. It is awesome. But now let's head into the stories you're just not going to want to miss coming up in our evening newscasts. Reviewing the Decatur Police Department and the changes made by interim police chief Natus Carlisle. 48's Callie Neese will have more on that. A Scottsboro doctor getting his license revoked for illegally prescribing drugs. 48's Savannah Sapp will have that story coming up. A Huntsville woman arrested for child abuse. And a star Auburn basketball player announcing where he's playing next season. Also, we have a Tennessee Valley local who was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in the NFL draft. 48's Carl Prather will have all of that coming up, and these are just a few of the stories you're just not going to want to miss coming up in our evening newscast. And I believe it is just about that time, you all. It is time for Facebook fun. Our 48 Facebook question of the day: what decade had the best music? And that is such a tough question. Honestly, I am going to say the 1960s. I think the 60s was probably the decade, in my opinion, that had the best music, just because you listen to the 50s, you listen to music in the 50s, and then you listen to music in the 60s. It is a night and day difference, and I think the creative juices were certainly flowing in the 1960s. Some awesome music, some awesome artists who came out of the 60s. So I'm going to lock in the 60s was the best decade for music. But let's see what you all had to say. And if you're watching at home right now, feel free to leave a comment on Facebook or YouTube. I can see them here in real time and I will shout you out. But let's see what you all had to say. Andrew said 90s and early 2000s. Those were also very great decades for music. It is so hard to choose one. It really is. Samantha said the 1950s. That is another great decade of music. I am typically not going back that far to listen to music, but everything I've heard from the 50s has been good. Bren, the 90s, a very popular comment. A lot of people choosing the 90s in the comments. Zach said the 90s without a doubt, especially the early 90s, 91 through 95. The 70s, Donna said the 70s was the best. That was another popular comment. I would say the 70s and 90s were actually the most popular that I saw in the comments. William said late 60s and 70s. That was a very good era. And then Pete says a lot of music, a lot of decades, the 60s to 2000s, everything from the Beatles to Weezer when it comes to rock music. And then, of course, Robert said the 80s, and it isn't even close. Y'all, I don't even know if I can choose now that I think about it, because music is music, and good music is good music. I don't believe there is a decade that determines what is good music and what's not, because honestly, I like it all. There's very rarely a time when you will put on a song and I absolutely hate it. I love most music in a range of decades. But great comments there. Thank you all for commenting on the 48 Facebook question of the day. Checking to see if anyone is watching or leaving a comment on Facebook or YouTube. Not seeing any at the moment, but always feel free to leave a comment if you do feel led so. I will definitely shout you out, but that is just about all the time I have for today's Before the Four. Once again, thank you for sticking around and spending a bit of your Monday afternoon here. Y'all, we made it through Monday. That is the hardest part of the week. And it is all uphill from here. But I hope you all have a great night. Enjoy tonight's evening newscast. Enjoy Weather Extra tonight at 9:30 right here in the CTV Center from 48 First Alert meteorologist Brad Travis. He'll be here giving you all the latest weather updates. But as always, have a great night, and thank you so much for watching.